This is a 1995 Land Rover Defender. It's a former fire truck, or to be more precise, it's my ex-fire service truck. So, I'm not saying that I had a relationship with a firefighter and that now this person is no longer a firefighter. No, it's that this is my Land Rover Defender and before it was with me, it was a fire truck. But shh, I love it. What you're seeing is the car of my dreams. Yes, another one. I have many dreams, and I'm sharing them all with you. But this, I think it's the most beautiful of all my dreams, and the most expensive too. So, quick disclaimer. Before this video starts, I want to tell you something. If you're about to comment without watching the video, saying things like, wow, this guy has a lot of money, or he owns a Land Rover, but Land Rover is crap, I don't care. Honestly, I don't care at all, and I know that 98% of the people watching this video don't care at all either. I want the people who watch this video and comment on it to be car enthusiasts, 4x4 enthusiasts, adventure lovers, but above all, just passionate people. That's all. I don't want haters. And anyway, if you watch this whole video, I'm going to explain everything to you from A to Z about why I ended up owning this car, what I'm going to do with it, and what it brings me. So, if you're up for it, you can just come along with me and I'll show you what I do with this vehicle. I'll also tell you its story and explain the history of this vehicle. Are you with me? Actually, my Defender is a former fire service Defender. Want proof? They left the two-tone siren. Now, I don't know if they were allowed to leave the two-tone siren, but they did. Anyway, yes, that's actually where you can find the Defender's DNA, because before the Defender became something cool like it is today, it was mostly something useful. It was actually created to be useful. But to understand that, we first need to go back to 1945. The war has just ended and the United Kingdom needs to rebuild its industry. And above all, the United Kingdom needs to export to fill the country's coffers. So, Rover, which until then had been making rather comfortable sedans for wealthy people, realized that it would have to change its strategy. Indeed, the country needs a simple, robust, reliable, and above all, useful tool, capable of working in the fields in the United Kingdom or in the British colonies around the world. So, it's quite funny because at that time on British farms, farmers were using Jeeps. Willys Jeeps from World War II that were decommissioned and that anyone could buy from military surplus. These little 4x4s quickly became real agricultural tools that could be used both for pulling loads and for actually working in the fields. By the way, Maurice Wilkes, whom we'll talk about a bit later, who is an engineer at Rover Company, actually owns one himself that he uses on his farm in Wales. And by the way, farm jeeps aren't just something used in England for working on farms, they've become a real social and commercial phenomenon in the United States, since Jeep even had brochures promoting the benefits of the Jeep for working in the fields. Like, you could even get them with optional power takeoffs to, I don't know, power all sorts of different tools. Saws, things like that. I don't really know what you could do with the Jeeps, but you could pretty much do the same as with a real tractor. Well, the problem with these Jeeps is that they're not designed to last forever. They're not British, and we're using second-hand Jeeps. Eventually, we won't be able to repair them without importing parts from the United States. Morris, whom I mentioned earlier, and his brother Spencer, who was himself the CEO of Rover Company at the time, he simply decided to create a utility vehicle that would look a lot like the Jeep. The first prototype of their vehicle was a Jeep chassis on which they used aluminum to reduce the weight a little bit, and then they put the steering wheel in the middle. The concept was called the center steer simply because the steering wheel was in the middle, so on paper, it's a great idea. This would allow the vehicle to be exported to any country, no matter if they drive on the left or the right, and no matter how the car is used, except in reality, it's a terrible idea. It completely takes up space inside the vehicle. It's not practical. You have to scoot over to reach the middle seat, but sitting on the correct side is the better solution. So in 1948, that's when the very first Land Rover series was unveiled at the Amsterdam Motor Show, which we'll obviously call the Series 1 since it's the first one. And then, imagine that it has a seat on the left or right side of the cabin, and on the other side of the cabin there's a passenger seat. It's so much more practical. Now keep in mind, at that time, Land Rover wasn't a brand. No, it was a Rover called the Land Rover. That's basically how it worked. So, roughly speaking, the Land Rover Series 1 was a real hit. It was produced from 1948 to 1970, and it targeted a very broad customer base, but above all, a very logical one for that time. Farmers, of course, and it would be exported to the many British colonies of the time. It would be used by the army, by public services, by country doctors, and naturally by NGOs. Then I'll go pick up 23 little things for my camp tonight. Intermarché? I'll find what I need here. It's cool because in the parking lot you don't have the same car as everyone else. That's stylish. Land Rovers have their own community. If I see another Land Rover, the driver is usually happy to see me and waves. So, obviously what I'm saying doesn't work at all with the latest Land Rover Defenders that have been made since 2020 because those people really don't care at all about having a Defender. They just have money. Oh, we're going to have a great time, my dog. I got some good stuff for tonight. Cheddar and wax imported from England. Now that's beautiful. Real import progress. We're right on topic. And then, well, gnocchi, tomatoes, bread, and tortels, of course. Hey, I'm thinking about the algorithm. No alcohol when driving. Hey, be careful with alcohol consumption. I'm a public figure. It's my duty to say that to people. You understand? So, the big advantage is that, back there, look, fridge. Now, not that it's necessarily going to be very useful tonight. On the other hand, what's going to be very useful tonight is the heater I installed. But that, I'll show you later. So, anyway, all this to say that the Land Rover Series 1 originally had a real Land Rover chassis. The Jeep chassis was only used for the concept. That you understand. Anyway, 1.6-liter gasoline engine with 51 horsepower at its launch. Then it got a 2-liter gasoline engine and later a 2-liter diesel. That's really something. No, but it's mainly that, sure, the gear ratios in the transmissions mean that even the small gasoline engines are useful in the fields for pulling heavy loads and so on. But still, diesel does have its advantages. When you're pulling heavy things, it's a lot more practical than gasoline. So basically, this first Land Rover comes out and it has only one goal: to be useful, tough, and robust in any circumstances. By the way, the sales arguments back then were totally crazy, you know, because there were even ads at the time that talked about the car working at a 30-degree angle. Like, it works, the engine runs without any problem, without oil starvation, nothing at all, safely up to 30 degrees, and watch out bro, up to 45 degrees. And by the way, the first Land Rover, speaking of sales arguments, also had, like the Willys Jeep, the option to add a power takeoff. Same thing, to operate anything and everything that works with a power takeoff. I can talk to you about a lift, I can talk to you about a small conveyor belt, I can talk to you about anything at all. It's a true farmer's vehicle. When it launched, the Land Rover Series 1's only real competitor was the Willys Jeep, which was outdated and lacked a roof. Well, it's still a bit complicated when it comes to competition, and it would take a few more years before Toyota introduced the famous Land Cruiser, which would be a much more serious competitor for the Land Rover. So, it wasn't until 1958 that Rover made the first update to the Land Rover series, and that's when the Land Rover Series 2 arrived. So the project was immediately handed over to David Bach. David Bach, I'm not sure how you say it, who was the chief designer at Rover, so the Land Rover had to get a bit of style. Well, yeah. Basically, it's the first Land Rover to have the famous flared fenders on the sides that start at the back and go all the way to the hood, because the axles are a bit wider on the Series 2 than on the Series 1. I think we're talking about a 5-inch difference compared to the Series 1 that's really a lot wider. Now we have a version with a hardtop called the station wagon, especially in the long version, to carry people with a lot more seats in the back. Now it's really becoming a real car, you can actually transport people with it. However, we keep the same chassis architecture, the ladder frame chassis, the box section chassis, and the aluminum body for better resistance to corrosion and above all, a fairly moderate weight considering the size of the vehicle. We're still talking about a real big 4x4. With the facelift, we also have a new gasoline engine, the famous 2.25 liter, which produces 72 horsepower, an increase in power of almost 50% compared to the first generation. And believe me, in a field, that's huge. So of course it comes in a short version, the 88-inch, and a long version, the 109-inch wheelbase. That's the distance between the front and rear axles. And by the way, here's another fun fact, the Series 2 even came in a surprising 12-seater version that was actually cheaper than the 10-seater and the 7-seater versions. Why? Actually, in Great Britain, at the time and even until quite recently, vehicles with 12 seats or more were considered buses. So, there were lower taxes when buying it, lower taxes to drive it, and a few extra perks like being able to drive in the bus lanes in downtown London, or even not paying any taxes at all if you lived in London, and that's really cool. The English are real geniuses. So, from 1961 until 1971, the Land Rover continued to evolve under the name Series 2A, and over time it saw many improvements, such as the addition of the robust 2.25-liter diesel engine. Here, we're getting into the serious stuff, the first truly modern utility vehicle. And by the way, the Series 2A was an absolute hit. In fact, it's the vehicle that comes to mind the most when we talk about Land Rover because it was a huge hit. It even went as far as representing 90% of 4x4 sales in Australia during the 60s, and actually the numbers were pretty similar in the Middle East and Africa. It was crazy. And on the latest versions of the Series 2A, the headlights were moved from the grille to the fenders, mainly to meet American regulations. Because yes, the Land Rover was still heavily exported. And at the same time, something pretty funny, the Land Rover also produced the 2A forward control versions, which just means the cab was positioned farther forward. Basically, it was the 4x4 truck before its time. We didn't really hear about it for long because it was a very specific use case. That means not everyone necessarily needed a vehicle like that. But basically, it allowed you to carry much heavier loads. Damn, there's still snow in the mountains. Oh wow, look at that setup. But yeah, look, I'm really lucky. I live right at the foot of the Vercourse. And that's really cool, I have to admit. That's really stylish. But yeah, anyway, it allowed you to carry much heavier loads. It had wider axles, reinforced differentials, and there you go, it's a truck, it's stylish. And normally, if you're not too bad at math, you should guess that after the Land Rover Series 2 comes Series 3. Oh, well, no. Oh, no. So there are two schools of thought. No, I don't. That's my problem. You see, if there are rules or a sign, I won't go. With my luck, if I run into trouble, it's just a hassle. I really like sleeping up there though. We'll find another place to sleep. It's no big deal. What do you think? Someone's crazy about you. I didn't expect so much snow. Now I see why the pass was blocked on the other side. And this is my favorite camping spot. Did you recognize it? Cool. Come on, get in. So, the Defender is really awesome compared to like the 406 because before the Defender, I had a 406 that I had set up to sleep in, go camping and all that. But when it comes to headroom, station wagons just don't cut it. So, I needed a real 4x4. That's the reason why. Well, you know what? We're going to spend our evening like this. I'll tell you a bit more of the story I haven't finished telling you. And tomorrow, I'll really show you my 4x4 and why this 4x4. Yeah, no, but you see, for example, right now, honestly, the framing just doesn't work. Alright, so visually, the Land Rover Series 3 isn't that different from the Land Rover Series 2. However, it was the most popular Land Rover series since it sold over 440,000 units. That's just massive. Just a reminder, we're still in the 1970s. And by the way, the Land Rover series are so popular that the 1 millionth unit, like the actual millionth one off the production line, came out in 1976. That's really huge for a 4x4, you know? It's not like it's a Beetle. Like the Series 2, the Series 3 with a 2.6-liter 6-cylinder engine which was mainly intended for export. But the thing you need to know about this engine, and what I find pretty funny, is that it's a design from the 1940s, and actually that means it's not a very good engine, it doesn't sell very well. And for most Land Rover enthusiasts, it's the 4-cylinder and nothing else. The 6-cylinder uses too much fuel, it's too big, it's noisy, it's not the most well-regarded. Australians prefer the 6-cylinder, seeing the 4-cylinder as more of a toy engine. It must be hot now, I forgot my pan, honestly. Let's add some oil. Oh no, your pan's way too hot, Anthony. You're actually going to die. What's with all this smoke? If this keeps up, I'll die. The oil is burning. What a dumb evening. Go take a nap. I haven't even started cooking. Let's get the gnocchi. Worst case, I brought little tomatoes. Not convenient. Actually, the setup in the 4x4 is great. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow, but it's not the most functional or practical in the world. Alright, so it's 1978, and at that time you should know that Rover Company belongs to a company called British Leylands, which itself belongs to Michael Edwards. And Michael Edwards says, no, you're doing it wrong, we're going to refocus. Rover is Rover, Land Rover is Land Rover. Now Land Rover is a true brand on its own, I must remember that again. So basically, all the regular models' cars are Rover, and all the 4x4 models, well, the Land Rover are Land Rover. He really wants to separate the customers, separate the use cases, and honestly, for what's coming next, that's pretty smart. So the Series 3 also has a V8 now. The V8 is really special. Its design is a bit different compared to the regular Series 3 first. The nose is much longer, the grille is set back more compared to the fenders, it's really level with the fenders. In fact, it even sticks out a little because the V8 is really huge. We're talking about the Rover V8 3.5 liters all aluminum, which is a very good base. It's a very torquey engine, the sound is amazing, I'm gonna die. Damn, the gas. So, am I going to die or is the fire going to die? That's something to decide. Can I open back there? Actually, doing that works. This Series 3 is called the Stage 1. So, it's not because it got a tune at Shift Tech and now has a Stage 1 pop and bang tune. It's just that the Stage 1 in Land Rover's eyes is mainly the first stage, the first step in the transition from Land Rover Series to Land Rover Defender. The thing is really going to get modernized. And the Stage 1 is definitely much more modern than the regular Series 3 models. It's the only one in the lineup with a V8, and it's mainly intended for export. The English don't care at all about having a V8 at that time. It's still basically the oil crisis. Things are still pretty rough for the English. No, the 4-cylinder and 4-cylinder diesel are more than enough, but that's not the point. The point is, it really got a lot of technical innovations, like coil springs instead of leaf springs, which are really outdated and not great in terms of handling. We also have a full-time 4-wheel drive on the Stage 1 compared to all the others, which have selectable 4-wheel drive, so obviously the center differential is different. That's what makes this possible. It also gets the transmission from the Range Rover, which came out in the early 70s and was aimed at a much more serious, wealthier and more affluent clientele. The Range Rover is clearly not for farmers, and in 1983 the Land Rover series changed its name. The short chassis became the 90 for its 90-inch wheelbase. The long chassis became the 110 for its 110-inch wheelbase, and the extra long chassis became the 127 for 127 inches of wheelbase. So the series no longer existed from 1983, but that doesn't mean they're Defenders. And here, overall, we're really getting close to the Defender's mechanics because actually the Stage 1 I mentioned just before is basically the same mechanics as all the new 90, 110 and 127. We have coil springs, differential lock, good transmission, and so on and so forth, but we still have the small engines, gasoline and diesel. This whole story is really complicated. I'm going to lose a lot of people at the beginning of this video. It's 1989 and Land Rover releases the Land Rover Discovery. It's a much more entry-level model and especially much wider. It's semi-luxurious and only half a proper 4-wheel drive since, by the way, the Discovery has Defender axles. Why? Because at that point the lineup is such a mess that actually we have the Land Rover Range Rover, the Land Rover Discovery, and just the Land Rover. It needs a name. We'll call it Defender. The Defender, you know, and not Defender. Everyone says Defender, but no, they say Defender. 89. The series hasn't been called the series since 83, but anyway, it's called Defender. What kind of stupid script is this? So here, you see, honestly, it's cooking, it's cheese gnocchi, it's excellent. I forgot my cutlery, I cleaned them earlier, I forgot to take them. So, with the arrival of the Discovery, the 200 TDI that powers the Discovery, a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder turbo diesel also powers the Defender. Very good engine, but a bit rustic. Because actually, it's the basic naturally aspirated diesel version that was upgraded with a turbo and direct injection, so it's a good engine. It's nothing crazy. You had to wait until 1994 to get the 300 TDI, which is, in my opinion, the best engine ever produced and put into an original Defender. And overall, it has 113 horsepower, which is more than enough for everything. It's literally the most powerful engine we've ever had in a Defender. It's the best engine. In 1998, the TD5 replaced the 300 TDI. The Euro 3 emission standards became too strict for the 300 TDI. So, we switched to a 5-cylinder 2.5-liter engine, still with direct injection, which is great, except the purists, they're like, no, that's crap. Because you can't repair and diagnose it anymore with just a 10mm wrench and a screwdriver. It has a real ECU, it has real electronic engine management, and that pisses everyone off. Everyone claimed the TD5 was terrible and would disappear from roads in 20 years, especially in the desert where it would break down and be unfixable. They were all wrong. It's an excellent engine. Sure, it's a bit more complicated to repair and diagnose than a good old 300 TDI, but it's still an excellent engine. Me, I still chose the 300 TDI. I tell myself, deep in Africa, you never know. Do I actually plan to go deep into Africa? Not really. Here we go, 500 grams of gnocchi with your fingers. You won't do this every day, but it's really delicious. So the TD5 has 122 horsepower, that's great, and with good tuning, a turbo, and exhaust, basically 5 cylinders, you know, it can do 200 horsepower without even trying. And it's reliable, you can't say that about all the other engines. Alright, and then the Defender, L315 generation by the way, so basically it keeps going like that until 2007. Sure, there was the V8 and all that, but who cares? That's really not the most interesting part. But basically, in 2007, the emission standards became even stricter, and they had to replace the TD5, it had to go. That's when the 2.4-liter Duratorque showed up. Sounds impressive when you say it like that. It's the Ford Puma. But purists say it's the worst engine ever in a Defender. In my opinion, it's actually a great engine that doesn't really belong in a utility vehicle that's not going fast through vineyards and farms. Over time, those engines had reliability issues, especially in vehicles that weren't driven much or didn't go fast. If I recall, it was a lubrication problem in the engine, which isn't good. This is a Ford engine, but Land Rover modified it for tougher use. Remember what I said earlier about the Series 1, the angles and everything? Well, normally, you can do that with a Ford Transit engine in a Land Rover Defender, and I think that's a really cool innovation. It also gets a new 6-speed gearbox, which is really great. The first gear is very short to use the torque properly, and the 6th is very long to reduce noise on the highway. Here, we're really moving on to a new type of Defender that's already much more suited for regular use. It's even the Defender that drives the most like a car out of all of them. The other Defenders are more like trucks or tractors than cars. And by the way, visually, if you want to recognize this generation, which is called the L316, they no longer have the vents under the windshield, and they have a bulge on the hood. Those with air conditioning have a noticeable grille that protrudes from the hood, while mine and others without it have a flat front. And all the other changes happen inside the vehicle, and really it looks much more like a car. We even have touch screens, real modern control panels. It's a real vehicle that's completely different. However, everything like the chassis, bodywork, etc., it's still the same formula. We keep what's good and update what needs to be changed. That's the Defender's recipe. And overall, it's a very good recipe. Kind of like this gnocchi, a cheese. We're going to drink the turtle twist I bought. That's so good. Not bad, but seriously, healthy living, you know? The West Country Farmhouse Cheddar. Here you go. Well, honestly, I had a good evening. I ate some gnocchi, I ate some cherry tomatoes, my dog had some cheese, I walked in the snow, I took some pictures. Great evening. See you tomorrow. Only an hour later. So, actually, it's been a long time since I used my 4x4 to sleep in, you know. And now, the heater doesn't work anymore. Here, you see battery 1, so that's the engine battery of the Defender, 12.7, very good. Auxiliary battery 11.8, and actually the little heater, you see it shows error 0.1, that means not enough juice. Because actually I have a battery isolator. There's a little switch, I'll show you tomorrow. Basically, the two batteries are separated. That way, when the auxiliary battery is empty, it won't drain your main battery. Makes sense, but since I haven't traveled with the 4x4 in a while, I haven't used the battery isolator for a long time. So actually, it's been a long time since the auxiliary battery was recharged, and today I drove for 2.5 hours, you see? I didn't think to flip the switch or anything, and it's cold here in the 4x4. Without the heater, so I might start the 4x4 just to warm up the auxiliary battery so it can run the heater's motor. I don't like running my engine for nothing. It's stupid that I didn't think of it earlier. There you go. Now the engine is running, engine battery 13.4 and auxiliary battery 13.5. Yeah, it's going up little by little. Well, I ran the 4x4 for 5 minutes. We're back up to 12.2. It's better than nothing, but I was really cold. Spoiler, it's not enough. Good night. Oh wow. I'm freezing my butt off because, well, yeah, I couldn't turn the heat back on except for last night. So now it's 3 degrees I can't see. I'm cold, but it just goes to show a good sleeping bag makes all the difference. I wasn't cold all night. Outside the sleeping bag, it's a bit cold, especially since it snowed last night. It's beautiful. Here. Whoa, 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 careful. Yeah, no, it's a big boat, really. Be careful. Shamaler. Damn. So I'm tying it up because when it's like this, usually, let's just say I want to find it again, you know? That's what my Defender is for. These little moments with my dog, with my partner, with all of this, I'm so happy. So basically this Defender here is a Defender 300 TDI. So the last engine, as I explained to you, fully mechanical, it's exactly what I wanted. Let's say it's the best compromise between the two worlds, between the old agricultural diesel world and the modern engine world. We're still talking about direct injection and so on. And you still have that typical agricultural sound of old diesels. It's still enjoyable to drive. So this one is from 95 and it's a former fire service vehicle. As I told you, you can recognize it pretty easily by this red color. There's still the two-tone siren, the mounts and CB antennas in the 4x4. Now I'll show you something really cool. We have the radio channels firefighters use for drills, and I think that's pretty wild. So that's under the sun visor. You can see the sun visor is tinted because of the UV, since this thing has probably been there for a very, very long time, so it's going to stay there. So yeah, it's from 95, I don't remember, until 2014, maybe 2016 as a fire service vehicle, and I think that's really cool. Then it belonged to a couple, by the way. I want to give a warm shout out to Nicholas, who sold me this Defender. It was really hard for him to sell it to me. I'll explain more later, but this Defender went to South America, was a former fire service vehicle, and was later converted. I bought it already converted, and I think that's awesome. awesome. So, aesthetically, the few modifications on the vehicle were made by the firefighters, like the reinforced steel rims, wolf rims, white rims that match the roof. Obviously, that's because the firefighters actually have pretty good taste. By the way, I had a little issue with those rims. The spare wheel used an inner tube, so the valve hole was re-drilled, letting moisture into the tire. This contaminated the rim, so I patched it and drilled a new hole elsewhere. The problem is, I did a really bad job, so I gave the rim to Remax, and as usual, they did an amazing job. The skid plate protecting the engine isn't big, but it's effective. It's all stock. I considered lifting it and adding big tires, but realized there's no need. It's already an incredible off-roader. There's no need to lift it, no need for big tires. For looks, sure, but honestly, I think it's cool as it is. It tells a story. When it was retired, they added these side stripes to make it a bit more civilian. And that's it. What more could you do? It's great just like this. Alright, to be honest, I didn't expect the weather to be like this at all. I'm starting to freeze my balls off. I'm going to start up the 4x4 and get out of here. I'll show you the setup, the engine, all that stuff at the workshop, and I'll explain in more detail the story of the 4x4 and what I'm planning for it. We'll get to test the new Continental Conti Cross contact tires on the fresh snow. We'll go down slowly, just being honest. But these tires seem to be really good. When I bought the Defender, it had 4 Michelin tires on it that were really done for. They did South America, so that's 40,000 kilometers over there. Then I put on BF Goodrich tires myself. The famous KO2 all-terrain, very good tires, but still relatively noisy on the road. And since, sure, I do some off-roading, sure, I go on trails, but I don't do any serious rock crawling. I don't do heavy mudding. I wanted road tires with an all-terrain tendency, not all-terrain tires with a road tendency. And honestly, these Contis seem to do the job really well. When I'm driving at 80 or 90, it's not too noisy, whereas the BFs were still pretty noisy. Music. Alright, the whole story, because if I'm going to tell my life, I might as well tell it all, you know. Actually, the thing is, originally we just got out of the 206 GT contest, so I took out a loan from the bank and all that. It was a bluff from the start, this contest. I told myself, there's no way it's going to work. I had never taken out a loan at the bank in my life, and I thought at any moment the banker could just say no, and that's it. The contest, it goes ahead. I use contest winnings to repay the loan, and once it's paid off, I realize I can take out another loan. I did this personally, not professionally, and paid it off. The next day, I call the bank again and request 24,000 euros. Since they saw I paid off my loan in about 2 months, thanks to the contest, it makes sense. And well, the guy tells me, yes, no problem, so I ask him for 24,000 euros because originally I saw a 911 996 Carrera, freshly painted, new engine, so IMS. Everything's done, so I thought, let's go. I'll buy a 911 on credit. I don't care. Except the 911 had been sold. Between the time I applied for the loan and the time it was approved and I got the money, the guy had sold the car, so I thought, well, what's the second dream car for me after the Porsche 911? Because from the beginning I've been telling you that the 206 RC and the 944 are my dream cars. Yes, they are, but they're my dream cars. Small budget that technically I can buy outright without taking out a loan, and actually it turns out that for 24,000 euros, well, Defenders are actually very complicated because, you know, 911 and Defender, these are dreams I've had in my life that I can't afford. That's it literally, except for some real junkers, but those are things where if you buy real junkers, you'll regret it big time. Because it's impossible to get them back into good condition without breaking the bank, you know, so I ended up finding this one that was listed at 19,900 euros. So I go there, I check it out with Corentin Hertier, by the way, from Hertier Classics, who I'd like to give a warm shout out to. So yeah, I go, I try it out, I'm super happy, I'm like, wow, this is really crap. A Defender is exactly what I want. I love it. But a few days later, he calls and says he can't let it go after all. A Defender, that's what it is actually, and I totally get it now. Looking back, a Defender isn't just a 4x4. It's a damn memory machine. Like, since I've had it, I've done 20,000 kilometers with the Defender, and that's 20,000 kilometers of memories. I get it. After living in your Defender for a year in South America, you call the buyer and say, bro, I don't want to sell it to you. The thing is, it breaks my heart because I thought, wow, it's really perfect, but I tell myself, it's okay, I have 24,000 euros in my account, I'll just buy another one. And actually, that's when I realized that buying a Defender for 20,000 euros is really complicated, it's really expensive. A Defender, like between 20 and 24,000 euros, they were Defenders that were either rusty or modified to the core, but not in a cool way, not like stylish mods that I could buy and be happy with, it's like just mods. crap mods just to put 35-inch wheels on, and then the thing becomes undrivable. Technical inspections failed because of rust, that kind of crap, literally for 20,000 euros. 2 years ago, when I tried to buy my Defender, 911S at 24,000 euros were already gone, so I ended up taking out a loan for nothing, and in the end, Nicholas was the Defender's seller. He calls me back, he says, listen, actually, I'll sell it to you because I realize I really don't need it anymore, and I feel like you're actually going to use it, so come on over. And I think it was one of the happiest days of my life when I went to pick it up. Thanks to Jimmy for joining me that day. Now the snow is turning to rain. I'm heading back to the workshop and will explain the setup and my plans. And yes, our little Twingo for the Twin Red is finished, so yes, actually, I'm leaving in 3 days, I think, with Benotto, heading to Spain, then on to Morocco. That's a reference to the Porsche 917 the Pig, or Pink Pig, and I'm just a huge fan of the livery. Oh, another pink car. Anthony Perrier? Well, yeah, I love pink, it's spring, it's flowers. You see here, I'll show it to you quickly anyway. You can follow the whole preparation on Benotto's YouTube channel. Since I'm leaving with him, I'll cover this very briefly. I'm showing it now, but you'll see the full video later on the YouTube channel. This is our little Twingo, and I'm really happy with it. It's beautiful. Anyway, since we were talking about travel and 4x4S, I thought the parallel was nice. Alright, so now I'm going to talk to you, as I've already teased throughout the video, about the modifications in the 4x4, what I've done, what I plan to do, and the vision I have for the Defender. In a few months or even years, right? Before showing you the Defender, I want to show you something I think is the worst thing I've ever seen. You see, around the Defender, there are gutters. And these gutters, I use them mainly to attach this galvanized roof rack. You see, it's really simple, right? There's a square tube that fits in and it gets clamped in place. There's foam each time to avoid damaging the brackets, etc. And honestly, it works really well. It's sturdy, it's great. Why the end of the bracket? There's a hole, so your water, you see, it comes here, it accumulates, it flows here, and look where it runs off right here. And now look, when I open the door, no, but seriously, who thought of this? Is it a great idea? Why did no one notice? We're in 95, it's been, what, almost 50 years since the vehicle has existed, and they thought this is awesome, or maybe mine has a problem or something is missing on mine. I don't know, but in any case, it's not going to stay like this. It annoys me. Seriously, it's really something that gets on my nerves. 3D printer, I have some white polycarbonate. I'm going to model something for you, a little slide up there so it falls onto the windshield. It's just stupid. Anyway, as for the setup, so you should know that I already bought it with the electrical installation I told you about, the 2 battery system, etc. And they had added on this side a kind of outlet for an RV. You take it out, plug it in using the included extension cord. It's a camping adapter. It's not connected now, but I think it's great. Because, well, it allows you to recharge your second battery when you stay in the same place for a long time, and I think that's really cool. In the back, in terms of setup, you have 3 mattresses. The mattresses are 60 by 120. They were custom made by an expert mattress maker, so they're 60 by 120. Actually, it's a standard mattress size for babies, for a crib. And it's great because, as a result, it's exactly the right size for the Defender. And also, you can find waterproof mattress protectors like this, which is great. You can imagine with the little furry monster who's always with us. But so, they're not just baby mattresses. They have a density that's still quite firm, which means they can support the weight of an adult. I've never slept in a crib, but I think it's uncomfortable for adults weighing 60 to 100 kilos. You see, honestly, no problem at all. Even for a while, I actually sleep better in here than in the apartment, you know? And then, as you saw here, this board that's held with the elastic bands, you can remove the elastics and then you can slide the board. Then, you take the mattress, you put it there, you take the other mattress, you put it there. That gives you a real bed, and the bed is pretty high off the ground. For me, the bed comes up to my nipples, so it's actually really high. But I have to admit, getting down from it is something. When it's 3 in the morning, pitch dark, you don't want to wake the other person, and you want to go pee outside, it's pretty high. So I made this thing. It's pieces of scrap metal welded together. I screwed on a small board that I stained, and it's screwed directly into the original spots that are made for this with threaded inserts. So I'm not going to lie to you, it's great. I'm going to take off all the mattresses and show you what it looks like. Once there are no more mattresses, once the mattresses are removed, it looks like this. So we end up with lots and lots of storage. So why does the storage only go up to here? You're going to ask why. Simply, this is a utility Defender with 3 doors. The 5-door version has an extra door here and offers much more space. You only have the wheel arches taking up space inside. Whereas here you see you have these huge empty spaces. From start to finish, except here, I added a practical water tank with a small tap. It's expensive, about 300 or 400 bucks, but it's not bad and fits the shape well. But yeah, it creates a lot of dead space in this Defender. So actually, you can't really have that much storage down below, unlike the 5-door models which are used a lot more for camping in the end. Here, it feels much cozier, and it's nice not having doors in the middle. The windows are also much bigger, which is actually kind of funny. But these are actually windows from a Defender pickup that normally go in front of the bed. You see, they've been put on a Defender that's usually completely paneled. And then, well, to put a window on the door, you take a rear door from a regular Defender. And then, same thing here. You've got another big storage space here. You've got a big storage area where we put the bedding, pillows, all that stuff. The small compressor fridge, and we've also got storage here. And a really cool thing that was done by the previous owners, it opens up really wide and it also adjusts to the height when the mattress is installed, so you can still open it even when the mattress is there. And that's really clever. That's where we put the food, and the other spot is for lamps and everything else useful. And you should know that originally, with the previous owners, they had built a cabinet that went all the way up to the ceiling because they traveled for about a year with the vehicle, and for us, well, we don't need that. So I made a kind of little work surface with these two small holes, which are really useful, and honestly, it's not so bad, because with this kind of stainless steel work surface, you can cut things, you can do a lot of stuff and everything. First of all, it's more hygienic than steel, and it doesn't rust. There you go. I made this thing, which really isn't the most practical thing in the world, but it gets the job done. You see, there are two screws sticking out, you put them in the holes, normally the legs go there, I managed to make them stay here, so now it's straight. And then, you see, it makes a real table where 3 people can sit. One here, one on the side, and maybe one there who sits on a can or whatever, we don't care. So, there are a lot of improvements to make in this setup. I'm aware of it, I just don't take the time to do it, but really, we could do millions of things. So here, you see, for lack of time, I admit many features of the setup remained unchanged after I bought it, because I think they're well made and versatile. But I admit, in the long run, I'd really like to make my own setup, so if any of you are specialized in that, I'm in Drome, in Valence, and we can talk about it if you have ideas. Honestly, it's like 3 square meters, I think. There's a way to do something great in there. My few changes are cool, but not optimized. You probably noticed that pipe going up into the box, it's a bit odd. It's not the best looking setup I've ever made, but at least it works without altering the integrity of the 4x4. Because yeah, I could have installed a heater, for example, right here behind by making a box, etc., by making the air intake here on the side and the exhaust underneath. Or even have the exhaust connect to the original exhaust, or even have the diesel come from the original diesel tank. That would be a real upgrade. Very cool, because right now I just have a small fuel tank. It's not the most practical thing in the world, but hey, it works. You see, I made a little custom 3D printed polycarbonate piece, a piece of plexiglass that was cut. So actually, the window is just slightly open, but in a way that it's locked. Here you see the seal came off. These are all things to improve, but it's watertight and it works. I'm really happy with this thing. Up front, I didn't do much. What I did was add a Momo Prototipo Heritage, a real one. I'm really happy. And by the way, the hub here is from GT2i, so don't hesitate. If you need anything from GT2i, they'll always manage to find it for you. Damn, is that a Defender? It has nothing to do with a rally car, but you can still find parts from them, and that's really cool. And then I set up my own little sound system with an Android car stereo. AliExpress, 40 euros. And then, on the sides, I won't sell that. I won't send you the file because it's only for this model of car radio, little 3D printed things, which makes it really super clean. It looks original, as if there was never a car radio. So I ran the wiring harness entirely from start to finish, same way. 3D printing, I added some small speakers here with something I made using 3D printing. Honestly, it works really well. But yeah, a 40 euro car stereo from AliExpress. With a crappy amp, don't expect to power this and listen to sound like in a Maybach, that's not possible. So I added a Focal Ibis 2.1 here, which is a flat subwoofer that does the job. We get very deep bass without putting strain on the amp by trying to push out bass. Here there's zero bass, only mids and highs, and the bass is in the subwoofer. That means we have a really balanced sound. You can turn the music up loud without it being unpleasant, and honestly, it's really good. Oh yeah, and one last thing I wanted to show you, actually, this thing here. Do you see the window? I can easily remove it using these waterproof connectors. I take this off, remove the cover, disconnect a connector inside, take out the window, and close it. No one notices. It's super discreet and it works really well. And as for heating, so I went with this model. It's a Wever model that I found on the internet very easily for just about 100 euros, and it works extremely well. I have the 2.5 kilowatt model, which is more than enough. It might even be too powerful for the Defender, because actually it regulates the temperature very poorly, like once it gets to 18 or 19, 20 degrees in the Defender. It won't stop the fuel supply to the burner, so it keeps running and uses too much fuel. You can't turn off or lower the heater when you want. With poor insulation in your 4x4, it's always too cold or too hot. I could get a different model, but I really can't stand roof boxes anymore. It was really cool at first, very practical, but visually I don't think it's great. You see, it doesn't look very professional, it doesn't have much of a Cali look, so I'd like to eventually switch to more discreet boxes to store my stuff. Still, I always have what I need to make a fire. I have wood, I have a saw, I have little camping chairs. I've got a lot of really useful things in there. But I think that by using longer, flatter trunks, I could carry just as much and have a more discreet look. Oh yes, the spare wheel carrier is also from the fire department. It's a quality hinged carrier that attaches to the vehicle's chassis. Rather than just on the door, over time, wheels that are fixed just on the door will just wreck the door, wreck the hinges, wreck the frame that holds the door. It's not great, it's better to avoid that, it's much better. Same thing here. Wheels on the hood or on the roof, I'm not a big fan because first, on the hood when you want to open it, it's really heavy, you have to reinforce the hinges and the things that hold the hood up, and then on the roof. Honestly, the wheel probably weighs 30 or 40 kilos with my build. Taking it down from 2.5 meters isn't practical. Plus, the previous owner already replaced all the bushings. Powerflex, polyurethane chassis bushings, and it's the same, it makes the vehicle handle really well, it's super nice, I'm really happy with this thing. What? Of course, there are plenty of people who will say in the comments, yeah, it's a Defender, it's really not reliable, it's kind of crap. Well, I don't agree with you. I'm not going to tell you they're the most reliable machines in the world. They're still English cars. You know, there's a very serious saying about a Land Rover, it's hard to keep the water out and the oil in. I can confirm that's 100% true, but that doesn't mean it's a bad machine. For me, these are machines that are reliable, but they require maintenance, they require care, they require time. It's simple, but today, with hindsight, we can say that. The 300 TDI engines are a bit sensitive to overheating, so that's something to watch out for. Head gaskets, it's not a myth. This vehicle, before I bought it, actually had a head gasket replaced, and that's just how it is, it's normal. Some people aren't as lucky as others. I have to admit, I'm very lucky. So far, I haven't had any issues. We replaced both rear axle shafts due to minor play, nothing major, but it cost 700 or 800 euros. I had an expert do it. That's all. I don't want to get my hands dirty. I do the maintenance, but when there are big annoying things to change, I don't want to do it. There are specialists who know this stuff inside out. I don't want to touch it, I don't even want to learn how to do it, and yet these vehicles are basically designed so that the user can repair them. Back in the day, when you bought a DEF, they gave you a user manual and a maintenance manual that was like 4 times thicker than the user manual, and I think that's great. It means that anyone who wants to can do it. With the right tools, you can do everything on your DEF, but I admit, for now, I'm glad there are still specialists who take care of it. And honestly, I read a lot on the internet that these are indestructible vehicles, that they can withstand anything and everything. Guys, you have to own up to it. That's not true, but what is absolutely true is that this vehicle is made to be repairable. No matter the situation or damage, if you bend your chassis, just buy a new one, put your Defender body back on, and since it's made of riveted aluminum panels, you can simply use a drill to change the body. And then, there's something else about this vehicle. People really like it. It makes people smile, you meet people, even hikers when you're on a hiking trail. The guys, they're usually like, hey, that 4x4 doesn't belong here, it's happened to me before, you don't belong here. But then they're like, damn, Defenders are really cool. Don't go on hiking trails with your 4x4S, I didn't realize it was a hiking trail. Those little marks on the sides on the trees, that means it's not for Defenders here, period. But anyway, I met some great people. With this vehicle, it's not going to stop anytime soon, I hope to keep it as long as possible, but damn, seriously, what a car. But with that, subscribe, I send you big hugs, and see you very, very soon on YouTube for another video that you're definitely going to enjoy. There was a little clue throughout the video, and by the way, it's still here. This Porsche 356 isn't mine, and actually, it's not even a Porsche 356. If you recognized it, let me know in the comments. Sending you big hugs, and see you very soon. For another really cool video, ciao.